Now, I'm in the rainforest with rainforest internet. There is no way this isn't glitching. I'm aware of that. I'm a bit of a glitch in the matrix myself. But I don't care. Good morning, good morning. Okay. So, this is a general video. This is a collective message. And this is a channeled message that I have felt drawn to do for some time. That I'm decided today is the day I'm going to do this message. And it's a story time. Okay, just clearing the energy. Ooh, hello. Just open up this space a little bit more. Welcome to your favorite muse, oracle, sage, healer, mystic. This is a short story time about a tarot reading that I did. Calling in extra protection around this space. So, and if this is too glitchy, I will make another video. As a beautifully disabled oracle, it is sometimes just much easier for me to do a live. Okay, so I've been looking at ways to address and open up the conversation around queerness in the spiritual community for some time. I don't know what the hell is going to happen with this channel because I'm a rebel girl and apparently I have some bones to pick with the spiritual community. Hi darling, how you going? Well, that's a very particular niche. I mean, to pay for that kind of kink, you're definitely going to have to put in some actual dollars. Oh, that's right. I haven't put up my thing yet for you to be able to donate. Whoops. Maybe that's because I expect better from the collective. Okay. So I want to address queerness in the spiritual community. This is a conversation that I've referenced multiple times in multiple videos that I've made on this humble little channel. And I think the best way for me to begin this conversation in this space is to talk about a reading that I did once. This was an in-person tarot reading back when I was still doing in-person tarot readings very regularly, which I'm considering doing again. And it was just one of the most heartbreaking tarot readings that I ever did. And I've done some really intense tarot readings, right? Oh my God. So specific. What a specific niche that is. Blessings around you and your family and your lovers. Okay, so this reading, this specific reading was with a queer. It was actually a couple reading that I was doing. So I was reading for two women. Obviously, I'm not going to mention any names or too many details, but basically, one of the women was a survivor of conversion therapy. If you don't know what conversion therapy is, and it shouldn't even be called that, there's actually other terms that are being discussed to use around this particular thing, which is basically, and let me just say, I was not raised in the church, okay? I wasn't raised in churches. In fact, my people, the Indigenous, the Aboriginal peoples of so-called Australia, were almost wiped out in part by churches, in part by Christianity, Catholics, Germans, and I don't mean drummers in general, but like missionaries, you know. And so I have a complex relationship with churches as an Indigenous person. And similar to how in America there were lots of reservation schools and lots of children put through a ... abuse. Also, YouTube, we need to be able to have these conversations, so please don't censor, especially when it's coming from a black person who's Indigenous and a queer. But basically this woman who I was reading for, she'd been through conversion therapy. And I won't go into too many more details because I know there's a few telepathic people watching. But basically, at one point in the reading, she said to me that the church that she was in when she was younger, and this happened when she was a lot younger, when she was a teenager, and her parents started realizing she was queer. And she said the church told her that they closed her third eye. And she looked at me kind of shaking, almost in tears, and said, "Do you think that I can open my third eye again?" And like, it just broke my heart. Like, it was just the most horrible abuse of spiritual power. And conversion therapy is something that still goes on in this world, in lots and lots of places all over the world. And I just think this is something that needs to be acknowledged and addressed within the queer community, that there is an interaction with the church that is actually a spiritual violation. Yeah. So in the spiritual community, we talk a lot about balances between divine feminine and divine masculine. We talk about the divine masculine, the divine feminine within, right? And there being this ongoing, just settle down, simmer down. God. Just moving energy for the whole collective. You're welcome, you're welcome. So, I'm trying to tell this story without like getting... Yeah, so I see that within the spiritual community and within the tarot community, there is a whole lot of binary conversations. There is a lot of brushing over of this, a violation of queer people's rights, particularly children, particularly youth. And this woman who I was reading for, she was, you know, in her late 30s, I think, or mid 30s. This was a few years ago now, quite a few years now. What is time? And so it had been like, you know, 20 years of her believing that she didn't have a functioning open third eye, that she didn't have access to her own third eye anymore. If you are for some reason watching this video and you do not know what a third eye is, your third eye is
powering off.
Yep. Okay. Yep. The third eye is an important chakra that allows you to see beyond the veil, that allows you to see more than what you see with your two eyes, right? With your physical two eyes. It's a very, very important spiritual gift that everybody innately has. You have a third eye, everyone has a third eye, everyone has access to their third eye. And so I said to this woman, I said, of course you can see through your third eye. The church never had power to close your third eye. That was an illusion. But these are horrific psychological, spiritual attacks on queer people on gender non-conforming people, on trans people, on women who do not fit into the binary gender stereotypes. I know a bit about that. This suppression of sexuality, gender expression, non-binary thinking, this is essential that the spiritual community starts facing and dealing with this in a real way, not just glossing over it. Because even the way that tarot readers talk about relationships, like, is so gendered. And I'm not just talking about being heteronormative. I'm not just talking about it being centered around cis, straight, hetero relationships, which it is, but I'm talking about it being very specifically gendered, yeah? And you hear people say, you hear tarot readers and spiritualists say, oh, it's not about gender, you know, you could be any gender and receive this message. The fact that, okay, let me stay focused, because this is a story time. So I gave this reading to this woman, and she was, like, it just broke my heart that her parents who were big believers of the church, were so fearful of the way that this woman was different, the way this woman, you know, loved and had sexual, sensual, romantic feelings for quote-unquote members of the same sex. Even that's gendered, like English is so gendered. Indigenous peoples across the entire world have always had a much more expansive understanding of gender than the westernized church as we know it. And please, anyone who takes offense to this, anybody who is offended by this, please sit and ask yourself, are you being triggered for good? Are you being triggered in a way that is beneficial and helpful to you and the entire collective? So I'm just going to take this moment to call in blessings over anyone that has been through conversion therapy, which I personally have not, but I know full well via my lived experience as a queer person, as an Indigenous person, as a gender non-conforming person and woman, which seems to upset people even more because you can't fit me into any fucking boxes. You can't put me into a fucking stereotype in any way, shape or form. I call in blessings over anybody that has experienced this horrific abuse of spiritual power. And this is something that across the world needs to be banned because it is a physical abuse. It's a physical, what they do to these people who the church has decided are sinners is a complete violation of spirituality. It's a violation of human rights. It's a violation of this connection, this thread with God, with the Lord. Yeah? This also heavily affects the way that people see particularly women, particularly gentle, soft masculines. This is very much connected to some of the horrific things that have taken place in religious institutions, in religious schools, in religious studies, in churches. And there is a revolution, there is, if you like, a renaissance taking place at the moment that is being led by awoken beings that are saying no more, that are saying, I refuse to bow down and adhere to the church's rigid expectations of gender, of sexuality, of creative expression, even of who can carry and hold a child within their womb, who can be a parent. And I also want to acknowledge that there are churches that are actively standing alone and separate from the major church institutions. Okay, it's had a very strong, like, the, yep. Rebuke it. Just rebuke that. Yeah, so I've done like a number of readings with people that have been survivors of this kind of antics, this kind of actions, this kind of a abuse that takes place within churches. I'm not saying all churches do this, and as I was just beginning to say, there are a number, I just like, there's like a big presence trying to interfere with this message. Well, this message is getting out, just so you know. If you are a queer person who has survived these kind of antics within the church, this kind of violation of spirituality, this violation and abuse of power, and understand, if you are somebody who is tapped in to the higher ups, if you are somebody who has a direct connection with God, with the Lord, with the Creator, with Source, with even Gaia, to speak and hear and represent Gaia, who is also a goddess and a deity, any of the gods, any of the deities. This obviously crosses over many different cultures, many different races, ethnic, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Just give me 1 moment. Uno momento. If you are somebody who has a connection with God, with the Lord, with the higher power, you have a position of power that you can choose to either keep private in your own life. If you choose to open up any kind of spiritual space, any kind of healing space, any kind of spiritual practice, whether that is online or offline, you have a position of power. You have a responsibility. And coming back to this story time about this reading that I did, it absolutely it was so devastating, the way, how nervous she was to ask, and the story she told me about the church literally doing this kind of ceremony where they quote unquote closed her third eye. And I have heard, experienced, and known people, including somebody in my family, that has been through a exorcism because they are queer, right? So exorcisms still happen to queer people to try and get the queerness out of them, to try and stop them from being who they are. This is happening to people of all different races, all different genders, all under the name of the church. I also want to acknowledge that recently a pope has died, a pope who was very, from what I understand, and I'm only speaking from somebody who is not quote unquote in the church, somebody who was very forward thinking, and somebody who represented brown people, indigenous people, and as to a certain degree marginalized people. I think it's interesting timing that the Pope died on Easter. I think that there is, I know I'm getting very clear spiritual downloads, and my guides as well as a number of my angels are highlighting that there is a war going on within the church at the moment of people who are open to a conscious, awoken collective that includes an expansion of gender, an expansion of ideas of marriage, ideas of parenting, ideas of birth, ideas of who can be a priest, who can be a priestess, who can be in these positions where we are channeling and speaking from the higher ups, from God. This is such like, this is not how I thought I would start this conversation, but I've been drawn today to share this story with you. And if the person who I did that reading for ever gets to see this, I love you. I send so many blessings around you and your beautiful wife and your children. She's an amazing parent. She's an amazing wife. Her and her partner are some of the most like beautiful parents I've ever met in my life. And I rebuke what she went through. I rebuke what the church did to her and her friends in the church when she was younger. And I rebuke anybody putting anyone through conversion therapy. And I demand that it stops. So join me in sending a prayer out and a petition to the collective and to the church that conversion therapy stops. And that the spiritual community as a whole starts acknowledging queer people in a different way, in a way that is actually inclusive, and that all the closet cases get to come out too, because I've had so many problems throughout my entire fucking life with people that are too ashamed to admit their queerness, too ashamed to admit their gender, too ashamed to admit their true feelings about sex, about intimacy, about the wildness within, about connecting with the divine feminine, the divine masculine, which we talk about all the freaking time in the spiritual community, but we don't acknowledge the ways that that all communities, including the spiritual community at this time, has oppressed queerness, oppressed queer people, has oppressed trans people. Trans people get murdered every day, particularly brown, black, indigenous trans people. Gender expression is also different from being trans. You know, there are days that all I want to do is wear my friggin' overalls and my big boots, and I'm still the same person. I'm still the same woman. There are other days that I want to look like this. I want to dress a little bit cuter, a little bit more femme. I'm still the same person. And I feel myself not even wanting to give the goods to the tarot community and share everything in the spiritual community, in the tarot community, and become the full, powerful 3D leader that I can and probably most definitely will be, because I want to see this addressed. And I want to see people, particularly people that want to be connected to my energy, come forward in their true, authentic nature, including their queerness, their gender expression. No fear, darlings. There is no fear and there is no shame in this house. And I'm so sick of particularly closeted females who are closeted in whatever way that is, and closeted men and toxic alpha men being challenged by the way I hold my divine masculine energy and the way I hold my divine feminine energy. And I will tell you that it's taken a lot. It's taken a lot of bravery, a lot of hard work. It doesn't win you prizes. It doesn't win you votes. And it is sad that if I put up a YouTube video looking more femme, it gets shared more by the YouTube algorithm. That is a type of gender oppression. That is a type of discrimination. And yet, if I put on a tuxedo, and I cut off all my hair and drew a mustache on top of my already perfectly blessed face, that would also get shared more. And so there's these two extremes that are getting, you know, like, why is there even a shock factor in what I wear when I'm actually like still the same divine being? If you have been through some kind of gender discrimination, some kind of homophobia, transphobia, and oppression of your sexuality in any kind of spiritual space, that should not have happened. That should not happen anymore. That will not happen anymore if we stand up collectively and stand against it, as well as stand in our own true, authentic gender expression, in our own true expression of sensuality, sexuality, the carnal nature, because the truth is that gender does not exist in the concrete form that we are pretending it does. And that is absolutely the case in the spiritual community, and I am not going to pretend that that is not going on anymore. And I have a righteous rage at those that have pretended to want to be my friend and pretended to want to work with me, hold meetings with me, have some kind of spiritual calling with me, when actually they are hiding some closeted desire, sensual, sexual, romantic, or otherwise. Oh, and I haven't even started on the monogamy stuff, okay? Around this righteous, holy, holier than thou monogamy. Like, if you choose to be monogamous, if you choose to be non-monogamous, that is absolutely your choice. And this whole idea that, like, you need to seek and find someone of a very specific opposite to you is linked into a lot of things the church is responsible for. And a lot of it actually has to do with owning land and more cows and sheep back in the day. And we have begun. This conversation has begun. Ooh, ooh. I'm a liberator. And I will liberate with you, but not for you. And if any of you want to engage with me, my energy, my channel, and my magic in any way, you come forward in your true self, or go fucking meditate. Go meditate on it. I know you're not ready to hear the future, but I can tell you it's heaps less binary. And I am a prophet. I do see things in the future, as we all know. Also, why don't you fucking click like, share, and subscribe so that I can do this work a bit more sustainably. And so I want to give the goods. So much love from Queerz of Harmony.